Now, for the last 3 weeks, we've been going over 3 of the Aseres Hadibros. First the first one, then the second one, and last week, because of the Shaykhus to Nosai, we dealt with Kibbut Aforaim. So let's go to the third Dibra tonight. The Dibra of L'Sisa Hashem Hashem Elokecha Lashav Ki Lo Yenake Hashem. That's such a terrible Aveira that the Rebbeinu Shalom will not find it in his heart to forgive us. Now, what exactly does that mean? L'Sisa Hashem Hashem Elokecha Lashav. It doesn't say Lasheka, it says Lashav. Now, Shvuas Sheka is also, there's another posuk in the Torah, L'Sishbu Bishmi Lashoka. But here in the Aseres Hadibros, we're dealing with a Shvuas Shav. And what is a Shvuas Shav? A Shvuas Shav is a Shvua that doesn't do anything. Either because I'm swearing to the obvious, Al Eitz Shehu Eitz, I take a piece of wood and I say, I swear this is wood. I'm not convincing you in any way by using the word shvua, because you are convinced of the truth of what I'm saying without my saying it. You see that this wood is wood. Or, if I come along and I say, this wood is gold, I swear that this wood is gold, I'm also not convincing you of anything, because you know that it's not gold. So therefore the shvua is frivolous. It doesn't do a thing. That's a shvua shav, a useless shvua. A shvua that you're telling the truth, or you're telling a lie, but let's say Al Eitz Shehu Eitz, you're telling the truth. So what are you doing so bad? The answer is, because it's a frivolous shvua. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says in his Aseres Hadibros, I don't want you to make a frivolous shvua. Shvua Sheka is where you're deceiving. That means you're talking about a fact, a proposition, which may be true and may not be true, and somehow the person to whom you're swearing is interested that it should be this or that, and you swear falsely. That's a shvua sheka. You've invoked the shvua to deceive somebody. That's a shvua sheka. By shvua shav, you haven't invoked the shvua to deceive somebody, because either you're saying eitz shehu eitz, which is true, but it's silly because everybody knows it, or you said Eitz Shehu Evan, and you haven't deceived him because he knows it's not Evan. So the emes is that when we start thinking about this Dibra, we should really be having a sort of a problem. If we were stopped in the street by somebody and asked, look, what do you think is a worse Aveira, a Shvuas Sheka or a Shvuas Shav? I imagine that most of us intuitively would say that a Shvuas Sheka is the worst Aveira. I'm deceiving somebody. I'm using the formula of a Shvua, we'll see in a moment what that is, and I'm using that to deceive somebody. That's a terrible thing. But if I'm not deceiving him, okay, so I made a joke, I used it frivolously. So what? Big deal. I didn't do anything I didn't deceive anybody, and even when I said Al Eitz Shehu Evan, he knew that it wasn't Evan, so I wasn't really deceiving him. So what's so terrible about that? So how do we, if we assume that in fact the Shvuas Shav is less heinous than the Shvuas Sheka, so how do we tell ourselves, or how do we explain to ourselves why this Shvuas Shav should have made it into the Aseres Hadibros, but the Shvuas Sheka should not have made it into the Aseres Hadibros? So that's a problem which we should ask, and Yetz Hashem, when we've finished this shir, I hope we'll have an answer which appeals. Now, but before we go any further at all, we have to ask ourselves, what is a Shvua? What exactly is a Shvua? So, you can ask that mitzat the Loshen. What does the word Shvua mean? What does it mean? Does it have a translation? So you say, yeah, it means an oath. So what's an oath? What exactly is a Shvua? So the truth is that I always thought, while I was not able to explain it linguistically, I didn't understand why the word Shvua should have this connotation, but I always thought that what a Shvua is that I'm swearing, meaning that I'm asserting that this fact is as true as the Rebbeinu Shalom is true. You know, there's a machlokes in the Gemara, some of you learn the Dorem, right, and based on it, all of the Ram brings the issue whether Shvua boy shem or whether Shvua is loy boy shem, whether you need to mention the Rebbeinu Shalom's name by a Shvua or not. And even if you don't have to mention it, the reason is because the assumption is that the word itself implies the Rebbeinu Shalom's involvement. But what exactly does it mean? So I always thought it meant that this fact which I'm asserting is as true as the Rebbeinu Shalom is true. But then a Bocher showed me a few years ago, we were learning Nedorim in Yeshiva, so a Bocher showed me Tshuvas Radvaz, I think it's 17, where somebody asked him a shaila, if somebody says this is as true as the Rebbeinu Shalom is true, is that a shua? So the Radvaz goes and says, Chas v'shalom, you're not allowed to say that. That's a terrible, terrible, terrible avera to say that. You're saying that this is as true as the Rebbeinu Shalom is true. Nothing is as true as the Rebbeinu Shalom is true. Presumably he means the Rambam in the beginning of Yesod HaTorah, where the Rambam says, Ein amitosoi kamitas echad behem. The amitas of the Rebbeinu Shalom is not as every other amitas is, because other truths are relative. The Rebbeinu Shalom's truth is absolute. Chas v'shalom, he says, it's a terrible avera, and you should give this person malchus if he does that. It's the most terrible thing to do. But obviously, if he holds that it's the most terrible thing to do, that can't be the pshat in a shvur. It's a mitzvah to make a shvur under many circumstances. The truth is that the chinuch uses such a lashon, that he's saying that just like the Rebbeinu Shalom is Kayem, this is Kayem. I think that the Chinuch is not really arguing with the Radvaz, because I don't know why the Radvaz was so upset. Because how did the Radvaz know that when a person who says this is as true as the Rebbeinu Shalom is true, how do we know that he meant the whole philosophy of the emes of the Rebbeinu Shalom, whether it's a relative emes, whether it's an absolute emes? He just meant, look, it's true. You must mean there's a Rebbeinu Shalom. Yeah, there's a Rebbeinu Shalom. As much as there's a Rebbeinu Shalom, this is true. I mean, it could be that the chinuch means that the chinuch, if the person would say a lashon, which would justify the Radvaz's assumption that he means this is as true as the Rebbeinu Shalom is true in all its philosophical implications, maybe the chinuch would have agreed that you're not allowed to do that. But what he means is, when a person says this is Kaim, like the Rebbeinu Shalom is Kaim, he means it in a much narrower sense. Look, the Rebbeinu Shalom is true. This is also true. I'll call upon him. That does not explain what the word shvur really means. And then there's another strange thing which we have to ask ourselves, that I think intuitively all of us would have assumed that the logic would be that the verb to swear should be an active verb. I swear, like it is in English. It's an active, it's not passive. In Lashon HaKodesh, it's always passive, it's always nifal. Ani nishba, nishbati v'kayema, lishmo mishpetei tzedkecha. Nishbati, nifal. Anoichi ishovea, nifal, not eshba. In the kal it would have been eshba. If it would have been the active, it would have been eshba. Ishovea is in the nifal. So what does that mean? I am being sworn. What does that mean? I'm swearing. I'm making a shvur. So if I'm making a shvur, so why don't you use the active verb? And from deswegen, you have it in the passive. And that also needs explaining. So let's see what the word shvur might possibly mean. So Rav Shimshon Hirsch has a beautiful etymological analysis of the word shvur. That's in where is it? Vayera, I think. Then when Avram and Avimelech get together. So you see over there, the emphasis. What is the shoyrish of the word shvur? The shoyrish of the word shvur obviously is sheva shin beis ayin. Now, is there a connection between the concept seven and the concept shvur? And the answer of Shimshon says emphatically yes, because that's the whole parsha over there. When Avimelech comes to visit Avram, so he puts aside Sheva Kvosim. So Mo Ele Sheva Kvosim O Ele Shesamta Levadena. What are these seven? So because I'm swearing to you. And then at the end, Vayikro Shem Hamokom Hahu Be'er Sheva Kishom Nishbu Shneim. So you see that there's a relationship between seven and Shvur. Now what does seven and Shvur have to do with one another? So Rav Shimshon has a mahalach like this, because the number seven in our Torah concepts, seven is Shabbos. And Shabbos is the day which makes the Rebbeinu Shalom enter into our physical world. If there would have been an observer during the Sheshes Yemei Habriya, when the Sheshes Yemei Bereshis, when the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world in 6 days, so you would have seen a world where the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't function. Everything seems to be going by natural law. It's only with Shabbos, the 7th day, that the concept of the presence of the Rebbeinu Shalom in the Bria entered into the picture. When I say Ani Nishba, I am under the impression of 7. What that means is, I know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is involved in this world. I know that all my property and everything that I have only on sufferance from the Rebbeinu Shalom. When I say I swear, when I say Ani Nishba, I am saying what I am saying under the impression of 7. What I'm saying is, knowing that all the things that I have only because the Rebbeinu Shalom grants them to me, well, I'm saying, let him take it away from me if what I'm saying is false. In other words, it's meramis to the einish of the shvua, that the shvua is exposing yourself to the fact that the Rebbeinu Shalom would take away the property which I have and which I treasure so much, that it's He who gives it to me, and it's He who can take it away. And if what I'm saying is false, let Him take it away. That's the way Rav Shamshval has learned. Now, I had a little machshava that you could use his yesod in a different way, because I don't like this concept of having the einish already enter into the shvua. That's sort of reading into the word more than I think that the word yields. But I thought that using Rav Shamshval Hirsch etymology, so then I think what it means is like this, that a shvua is literally, what is the translation Ani Nishba in the Nifal? You know what the translation is? I am B7. That's what the translation is. I am B7. Like Rav Shamshval says, I am functioning over here, I'm speaking over here under the impression of what the word 7 conveys to me, and that is that the Rebbeinu Shalom is down here with us in this world. And I think that what it means is, and I'm saying what I'm saying in full awareness that the Rebbeinu Shalom is over here and listening. That the Rebbeinu Shalom is listening. I know the Rebbeinu Shalom is listening, and I'm saying that. You'd better be sure that what I'm saying is true. And we have to understand that taka, kiloye nake, you think what a terrible thing that is. If a person makes a shvua and says, I know Hashem is there, and he makes a shvua shav, or a shvua sheker, what he's saying is, I know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is there, and I don't care. It makes absolutely no difference to me. I do what I want. And if I want to swear that this eitz is eitz, knowing that it's frivolous, I don't care that the Rebbeinu Shalom is listening. That's a terrible, terrible avera. That's why Chazal say that Kol Olam Nizda'azeh, when he said, Shem Hashem Elokecha Lashav, the whole world trembled. You know, it's a very, very interesting thing. Every child, by us, Baruch Hashem, our children go to Cheder, they go to Yeshiva K'tana, whatever it is. By 7, 8, 9 years, they know already Mishnayos. Everybody's learnt that there's a din shvua, Shnai Merksa B'Talis, Zenishba, that the psak din is made on the basis of the shvua that the Balei Din make. He swears ein lo b'poros mechetzi. He swears ein lo b'poros mechetzi. And we made a little yachloikum. So it suddenly struck me, does that exist in secular law? And I asked a lawyer, a law professor friend of mine, I asked him, is there ever in secular law, I know that they make the Adam swear, that they make them swear that they tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Is there such a thing as a psak din being based on the swearing of the litigants? Like the Gemara is full of that. So he said, no, ein kazeh davar, doesn't exist. You know, it's a moirah de gezach. Why doesn't it exist? It's a very, very good system. The answer is because why should I say that he's telling the truth? Why he's afraid to say, I swear. By the ages also, by the testimony, it's also because if he's telling the truth, you can nab him for perjury. But there's no havamin that the shvua itself makes him say the hammers. Aber Baruch Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shalom likes his Yidden, and his Yidden are Yidden who are going to be nizah from a shvua. We all know that Kol Olam Nizda'azeh, when the Rebbeinu Shalom Aseres Hashem Lakecha Lasham. We know what it means that if I make a statement and I affirm that I know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is standing there listening, Anochi Ish Shavea, I am B7, and still I make the statement. On that basis, you can make a psak then and give him the half and him the half, or by showing to make him potter. Sure. That's a moirdige Sache. It makes you good, makes you feel good to be a Yid. That Baruch Hashem, we are part of that community whom the Rebbeinu Shalom trusts by believing our shvuas. So now, once we've got that straight, so it seems to me that perhaps we have a teretz on the kasha which we asked. So why is the Shvuas Shav in the Aseres Hadibros and not the Shvuas Sheker? We think that Shvuas Sheker is more chomer, and if it's more chomer, so then it should make it into the Aseres Hadibros. If only one of them can make it, but the Shvuas Shav outside, the Shvuas Sheker inside. Teretz is, first of all, why is it Taka Dibra? Because this is Taka, a constituent klal in the Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh. You know why Shvua exists, Kinderlich? Shvua exists because you walk around knowing the Rebbeinu Shalom is a real presence in your world, and that every word you say, the Rebbeinu Shalom is there listening, and you'd better be very, very careful that what you say is true, and that what you say is not frivolous. For Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh, for Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh, that is a necessary prat. If you want to be that kind of a nation who can be described as a Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh, you'd better know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is a constant presence in your life, and therefore be very careful about what you say. So once we say like that, so I hold it's efshar fakert. You're right that the Shvuas Shav is more kuladik than the Shvuas Sheker. Sof kol sof, I'm not defrauding anybody. I'm not deceiving him. So it's taka less chomer, and because it's less chomer, it's in the Aseres Hadibros, because that's the chaimer that the Torah is saying us. You know what? You want to be a Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh. If you want to be a Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh, then even your silly talk you have to curb, knowing that the Rebbeinu Shalom is there listening. Loi mi boya that you're not allowed to make a Shvuas Sheker, that doesn't show so much how chomer it is to be a Yid, how chomer it is to be a Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh. No, because deceiving is very, very bad. But even the Shvuas Shav al Eitz Shu Eitz, you're not deceiving anybody. So on that it says Lo Yednake, the Rebbeinu Shalom won't forgive you. On that it says Kol ha'olam nizda azeya, when the Rebbeinu Shalom said Lo Aseres Hashem Lakecha Lasham. What's so terrible about it? You know what's terrible about it? The Rebbeinu Shalom is there, and what you're speaking in the presence of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kinderlich, that's not what you should do. And Kol ha'olam nizda azeya, and Ki lo yenake Hashem, Sigutz zayna Yid. The flip side of that is that so if I go into Bezdin and I'm a Shnai Meisen Betalis and I come along and say Zen Nishba Shein B'Poros Mechetshe, that I yonah smile and give me my half talis. You know what? Because they believe me. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Shlo Yasani Goy, it's a moirdige Sache.